call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Do I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Please join us for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have public comment time. Has anyone signed up for public comment? Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? All right, we have one that has been submitted online. It is from Laura Hampton at 129 Cabell Drive. I understand the need to fund essential services, but these proposed enterprise fee increases come at the worst possible time. Many residents are squeezed from rising insurance premiums, soaring property taxes via jumps in property value, inflated living costs, lost employment, reduced pay, or retirement income. Scrutinize the budget to identify and implement a better way forward. This email can be read in its entirety in our agenda packet. All right, next up is the budget presentation. Part 2.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. So here we go again. We went back to the drawing board after the last meeting, and I've got some updates for you and some modeled some different scenarios, and so let's take a look at it and see what you think. This is just the same slide as last time. I like to keep the important pieces in there. And I just want to note, I'm going to go through these rather quickly. I sent most of the questions to you before just because we only have an hour and I know we want to get into the enterprise funds. So just tell me to screech if you need me to slow down. So this is what we're going to cover. We're going to model real estate tax impact with 2-cent reduction. We're going to model the overall impact with 1 cent real estate, 15 stormwater, 5 water and sewer, 2-cent real estate tax with 15 stormwater, 5 water and sewer. And then we'll talk about the enterprise funds. So first thing I want to do is go over the questions that the governing body raised both in the meeting last week and then through email. First one is what is our long-term vehicle plan? I think I answered that in the meeting, that we're going to try to disentangle ourselves from the enterprise program. I will say one of the things we did this week, and when I say we, I mean Mark, we did identify about $150,000 worth of savings in fiscal year 25 by moving to purchase cars rather than lease them. I expect that's going to be more in 2026. We just don't know yet. So, what timeline for phase 4 parking? Again, that's the parking lot that is over by Building B at Park 170, and that was supposed to have been done in February, but the trigger is when the Hosta wants us to build it if the other developer does not. I was not able to have it. I didn't have any time to go backwards in the 5-year CIP just to compare actuals to forecast. It's a lot of work. What is the nature of the water and sewer fund debt? Like I said, we're obligated to pay our share of upgrades and maintenance, but our friend Calvin put together a little slide here for you. Basically, this is the water and sewer enterprise fund breakdown. What the bottom line is, if you were to do nothing but pay your debt and operate the fund, you're still 1.76% behind. That's if you don't have any crew people, no staff, no vehicles, nothing else in the fund but the debt and the water and the sewer things that we have to pay. You'd still be behind by 1.76. The column C is interesting because that's it's 80% of the fund is the debt. The CIP is the CIP debt. So, and that's for both water or sewer capacity and then our share of maintenance and upkeep for the UOS facility. Then the admin fees, which again I think we should probably take a look at after we get this budget done and have somebody come in and look at it, a professional, and see what those right numbers are. But 25% and 0.72% of the fund right now goes to overhead. So, any questions about that? Or I'll go back to the presentation. Same thing we talked about, the increase in 28 is for the Route 28 corridor improvements. Fiscal year 30, the increase is the Matthew Avenue extension study. How do we pay City Hall lease payments? It does not seem capital. Like I said last time, we'll look at how we categorize CIP projects, but in more detail, the real estate tax that we get from the Stanley Martin project is just supposed to be enough to cover the debt service for City Hall. We won't know until that actually happens. I actually think it'll probably be greater than that, but that was the plan when this was constructed. Increase in storm and water for the flusher trucks. We need 2 because we can't use them for both purposes. We found out from the school there was a typo in their 26 projects and could add 2 things in it, but it is for the furniture replacement, not for the PA system. Wembley Elementary School's last refreshed, 2009 at Manassas Park Elementary, and Cougar in 2020. And they wanted us to note that none of the playgrounds are currently differently abled accessible, and the project that they're proposing in 26 will be. Signal Hill bathrooms, to make them ADA compliant. I think when we were here last time, I noted that the project was 1.82. That's the one that's actually going on now. All the furniture in the middle of the water park that kids play on is happening now. The bathroom facility was scheduled in this year for $3.5 million, which we don't have, and so that's where that is. And like I said, once we get into a better idea of our ending fund balance, we may have some other conversations we can have, but that's where we are right now. Here's some questions that came in after the meeting. Talked about police. What is the additional $500K for police equipment? There are components of police equipment that is law enforcement sensitive that not just anybody can install or purchase. So that's the cost outside of the enterprise build cost. That's what that's for, is to pay for the police radios and all those connections to the FBI databases and whatnot. It was also suggested that we move or remove the mobile command center, the critical incident response vehicle, and the critical incident response robot. And then why do they need the 14 sets of night vision goggles? None of these are in the 26 plan, so I'm happy to talk about them, but just to save us work right now, since they're all out at 30 or 31, we'll look at that after we get into the new year and see how critically we can look at what needs to be done. Same thing with the ladder truck and fire. Couple things about the ladder truck. My chief's not here, but the truck was purchased, or was the truck that we purchased from Manassas was built in 2013. Best practice is to replace them every 10 to 12 years. Ours is 13, and it has to undergo routine ladder acceptance tests. And once it can't pass those anymore, you can't use it anymore. So that's the idea, is they want to keep it alive as long as they can and then replace it. Not having a ladder, I found out, will reduce our public protection classification, which, if you are an insurance person, knows that's what they use to determine what your home insurance is, your renter's insurance costs will be, and your business insurance. I mean, all insurance that would be affected by having a fire goes up if we don't have a ladder truck. I don't know how much. I didn't have time to do that kind of analysis, but figured that out. And again, it's not in the 26 budget, so we'll talk about that after the new fiscal year, because there may be other options, like buying another used one that's not quite as old or something like that. So why are some of the replacements for some of the vehicles in water and sewer and stormwater not in the enterprise replacement program? Some of the vehicles we have in our enterprise funds are specialty vehicles, and enterprise just doesn't have them to provide us. And there was a question about paying for them, but if they're used in part or in whole for service to the enterprise fund, they can be paid for out of there in proportion to how much they're used. So nothing wrong with that. Okay, during the budget item last week, have we done an evaluation of the enterprise funds to determine the appropriate administrative overhead fees? Yeah, we'll need to do a fee study. I will say I'm going to make a presentation or slides later comparing us to some of our neighbors, and Manassas is doing it right now, and I don't have their 26 proposed rates because they're actually at the tail end of doing just what we're doing. So it might be instructive if they come up with some industry standards that we can just copy, but we'll see. And again, what is the scope and scale of the admin fees in the enterprise funds? And the bigger the fund, the bigger the admin fees and the more look we have to take to see if they're in alignment with what they should be. I was asked, can the savings in the general fund realized from not subsidizing enterprise funds be used to reduce real estate tax rate? Yes. Can you see a model of Can we see a model of 2-cent reduction for real estate? Yes, I'll show that'll be coming. How did you tackle UOSA and other entities increasing costs moving forward? When we do our forecasting, we plug into it every single thing we know. If unknown things come up, then obviously we can't predict that, but UOSA is pretty good about giving us their plan and telling us what to expect and when, so do the best we can there. Can we subsidize the enterprise funds out of the general fund until we have more revenue due to increased economic development, then consider a rate increase? You have the full power and authority to set the rates any way you'd like. I would caution that deferring costs and deferring capital programs is how we got here in the first place, and so I'd be careful about how much of that I did, but it is completely up to you. I was asked what the business and occupation license tax rate is. Business and occupation license tax is broken up by sectors, and retail is the biggest one, so I only included that one. But I will say that occupation license tax of all types that we get only accounts for about 2% of our total revenues. And I only mention that because you would have to make orders of magnitude changes to that to have any kind of a noticeable impact on the revenues for the city, which I don't think would be well received. Meals tax, same thing. Ours is at 4% and has been for a while. Fairfax City is proposing to raise theirs, and Herndon is proposing to raise theirs, and one more. Vienna is proposing to raise theirs. Arlington, 1% as well. I didn't make any recommendations on meals tax. And nobody asked for it, but I figured since I was doing it, sales tax, 6% all around. Nobody's making any recommendations, making any changes there either. And then sales tax, again, make up about 4% of our total revenues, so it's not a significant part of our revenue. School Stabilization Fund, which I'd never heard those three words. The budget I have prepared today does not have any, does not use any of that. That's goes back to where it was with the schools. Why did the overtime line in the fire department go up by $24K? Chief says that they switched to 42-hour shifts, which increased the hourly cost per firefighter, so that means every overtime hour costs more. And that's for city events, we said as a primary driver. We also have a whole bunch of new firefighters, and they have to be trained. They can't operate on their own until they've had, get certified, and so a lot of that training is done on overtime as well. He does expect the costs to go down once all the new staff, are trained and certified, but that was the explanation for that. Are there any positions in enterprise funds that should not be in there? No, there's one FTE in the stormwater fund. It's paid 100% by the stormwater funds, the program manager. I was mistaken last week. I didn't think we had added anything into the budget for people, but Calvin did ask for an inspector in that fund as well. And so that is included in the proposal here. But other than that, it pays for partial crew time, the people that maintain the system, but they also maintain the water system, plow the roads, and do everything, so it doesn't pay for much of them. And then again, the admin and overhead costs are obviously in there as well, which we'll look at. What's the average interest rate on our annual debt service? About 4.04%. Inflation rates between 2.5 and 3% baked in. Did we inflate every department by that? No, we inflated it based on what the line item was. For instance, salaries, I recommended a 2.5% COLA, so that's there. DSS they're recommending a 3% at the state level, so different things, the cost of different things change at a different rate, and so try to do the best we can to be as accurate as we can. Are the travel and training lines increased by percentage as well? No. Every department is charged with determining the training requirements for their staff each year. It's not based on an inflationary factor, but it's based on what kind of training they think they're going to need the year and how much it'll cost. How many FTEs are in the budget? In 2021, in 2025, there were 221. When that includes 2 FTEs that you added in December in your A1 amendment. In 26, I'm recommending budget will have 218 in it. That includes that stormwater person. No deputy city manager, no city attorney, no assistant city attorney. And note that in early February, when Yvette left, We moved the housing program over to DSS, and 2 of her part-time FTEs became full-time FTEs to manage that. But it was still a pretty significant net savings due to the difference in salaries. So, how many vacancies do we have? Well, we have 9. I didn't realize when I got this slide that it had the stormwater person in there that we had talked about. So those are the 5 in CD, DPW. And by the way, all of them are in the budget. All these vacancies are currently in the 25 budget and in the 26 budget. Here's the others. There's 2 in finance and 2 in police. That's the current situation. Is it possible to freeze assessments and use last year's assessment value? Technically, yes, and not right now because we're too late in the process. But it would require you to repeal a couple of ordinances and make a couple new ones. The state law enables cities our size to do assessments on intervals of anywhere between 1 and 4 years, and so that's something that can be looked at after the beginning of the next fiscal year. And just for your fund of knowledge, when we model assessed value and in our 10-year plan, we build in a 2.5% increase in assessed value year over year. That actually works out usually in 10 years because you'll have lean times and boom times like we're having now, but if it continues to be 6, 7, 8%, we might have to adjust that. Can we see the total impact of all the changes, including 2 cent? Yes, we can see that. I do want to point out that we did a serious combing of the CIP. We made some pretty hard decisions and kicked a lot of things forward. Doing exactly that thing that I don't like doing, but it was able to get us to a balanced budget using no unassigned fund balance and no school money. So what you'll see here is that's revenues meeting expenditures right there. And just again, for your knowledge, if the 1 cent reduction in real estate tax basically translates to about $273,000 in the general fund, which magnifies over time to about $3 million of revenue lost in the general fund at 1 cent, and then 2 cent, just double that. That's what the impact is of that. $273,000 is about 3 people when you include salary and benefits. So I like to think of it in terms of that when you're thinking about that. So here's a table that shows you what the impact is to the actual bill of someone in your average single-family townhome and condominium. So if we don't do anything, they would pay $533 more this year than they paid last year. We do 1 cent. Basically, every cent goes down $50. So I did 1.5 cents as well, which is about $25, as you might imagine. But that's the impact. So 2 cents is just about $100 reduction in net property tax for your average assessed value single-family home. Here's the impact of real estate plus personal property. And again, the Vienna and Falls Church did not have their 26 proposals out yet, so I had to use 25. But I think it's useful to look at it. So the column, the average assessed value column, is the average assessed value for each of those jurisdictions. And so I factored in what that would look like if you had to pay taxes on it at their tax rates. And the RE impact, real estate impact in dollars, that middle column is what you'd pay on your average house in Falls Church, $12,735, and then $7,082 in Manassas Park. And then going to the 1 cent reduction, which is what we talked about, it's a little bit less. Or, that looks backwards.
Why is this prefixing so low?
Oh, that's just one thing. Just adds up to the end. And then I included personal property. The way I did personal property was I assumed everybody has 2 cars. I think in Manassas Park that we have more than 2 cars. But the average value of a car in Manassas Park is $17,700. So I just built in 2 cars for everybody at $17,700, then calculated their personal property tax based on the rates in each of those jurisdictions. That's how I came up with that PP number, and then the one in which I thought was red on the end is the total of those two taxes. and how they line up in each of those jurisdictions. Here's the same thing with a 2-cent reduction. So you'll notice from Manassas Park, we go from 81.81 with personal property and real estate down to 81.30. Again, 1 cent's about $50, so not a surprising result. So just because I was running and I was into every one of their budgets, I was able to get, and with Kelly's help, there's stormwater, water and sewer and trash from each of these jurisdictions as well. And so I factored that in as a complete, what the total burden is on taxes or taxes and fees imposed by the government in each of these jurisdictions. And so that's the percentage on the end. The yellow column, the one highlighted in yellow, is just the mortgage and what that impact is as a percentage of the grossly monthly income for grossly monthly median household income. And then the last column is adding in stormwater, water and sewer and trash. And this is at 1% reduction in real estate, 10% increase in water and sewer, 25% in stormwater, 10% in solid waste, which was my proposal from last Tuesday. So I included this analysis for that, even though not what we're going with, but just to give us a starting point. So as asked to model, 5% water increase to water and sewer and 15% to stormwater. No change to solid waste. And so that's what happens there. It goes down a little bit. I don't know if you remember that lower right corner that is there, 44.38. At 1 cent, it's 44.46. So it's still in the same percentage point. It reduces it a little bit as far as what the burden is on an average homeowner in the city of Manassas Park with 2 cars valued at $17,700 and using average water at 5,000 T-gallons a month. Cash flow, yeah, so you guys got some pretty detailed information on that last week, but just in general, cash flow issues stem largely from the timing of when we get our second tranche of payments for real estate tax. So as we get towards the end of the year and we've been spending the budget down, when that those next bills are due, that's when we start to run low in cash flow. A lot of that has to do with timeliness, unfortunately, and so it's not really something we can control, but that's the biggest issue. And we manage that through the use of the unassigned fund balance, and so that's where we are. We did have some issues last year, but it was really related to the fact that we weren't transferring money out of the ARPA fund into the general fund when you made general fund approvals, when you made approvals out of the ARPA fund. And so it looked like the general fund was going down fast, but that's because we didn't make the proper transfers across to make it whole on whatever you approve. So that's the issue there. Here's the overall picture. I should have included the first presentation, but I didn't. So you're looking at a balanced budget at $82,099,515. Again, that's a significant drop from 25A1 because of the ARPA and some of the transportation projects that aren't in fiscal year 26. And like I said, we combed CIP and then those 3 reductions from the dean, or the attorney, assistant city attorney, and the deputy city manager. And this, again, is a revenues meets expenditures budget without any need for supplementation through unassigned fund balance or anything else. So I'm going to have Calvin come up now and talk about enterprise funds, because we have a little surprise there that I'm not happy about, but that's where we are now. Did you want to ask questions?
Yeah, should we stop for questions now? I'll just ask one and then we'll pass it down. Can you tell us what was cut from the CIP, or is that something you need to email us?
I should have known. This was literally last minute. I mean, we've been working on this up until I think 4 o'clock today.
Sure. Could you email
basketball
us the list?
Floor at the resurfacing the floor at the community center, the basketball floor, a couple of vehicles in Public Works, a bucket truck in Public Works. It was already pretty lean, so it wasn't a lot, but we ended up getting a few $100,000 out of that, and I can't remember, but I can list it out and
Great.
Send it to you after.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, start with Councilmember Cyberlin. Questions?
Not so much a question, but maybe a request for the future. On the USO fees that we pay, it's a little bit of a black box for me. And so just kind of wanting to delve into that and kind of compare what we pay against what other surrounding jurisdictions pay and what our portion is and how all of that works out, kind of demystifies that black box for our citizens and for me.
Okay, absolutely, and I think Calvin will be able to do that. I don't know if we'll be able to do it tonight.
You know, that's why, because
Yeah,
I'd like to
yeah.
see surrounding jurisdictions, kind of
Sure.
some comparison, and just making sure that, you know, we're falling in line with what we, you know, where we
Yeah,
should
we're paying
really
our
be.
correct share.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you for that, and I did watch some of the presentation last week. In this modeling here, they updated, what do you have for cost of living adjustment for the employee?
2.5, same thing.
2.5. And the other piece is, I know I made a recommendation for tuition reimbursement. I know that because we're lean years, there's been concerns, either group employees or single employees, the cost of tuition reimbursement or even training. Has any of that been looked at as capping any of that?
Not yet. We were able to get to where we are without having to do that, so if it turns out we need to do something further, then that's usually where you go first.
Okay. The other thing, just on the healthcare premiums for the employees, are the employees eating that cost increase, or is the city going to absorb the cost?
We split it using the same proportion that you were already splitting it. So
Okay.
we split the increase the same percentages.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciated, City Manager, on the presentation. I had a question about the COPS grant. The COPS grant that was funding 2 officers.
Mhm.
So that funding is gonna end for those 2 officers, and are they being absorbed in the 26, or are they being cut? And so how are they being absorbed in the general fund?
Yes, yeah. Although we do get reimbursement from the schools for part of that too, because they're school resource officers.
So those are SROs that are,
They were SROs, weren't they, Chief? Oh, well, guess I'm wrong. But either way, we did absorb it into the general fund, so.
so would that be considered then an increase in FTEs?
Well, it's been there for the entire time the grant's been there, so no. I mean, they've been counted as FTEs annually since the grant started.
So the number you gave us on FTEs, it was more than just general funded positions. It was
Correct.
all funds.
Correct.
So then, going forward, can we see broken out by fund? Because that
Oh,
would be
sure.
helpful as well.
Okay, yeah.
And you know, if I could get information on the 2 cops that we're absorbing in the general fund, their salaries, benefits, and total cost for those 2, that would be helpful as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a comment on 32. I think this is a great slide. As somebody who appreciates data analytics, I really appreciate the time that you guys put in to put this together, showing all of the local jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, including us, what monthly household income is what that is.
Median household income.
Median household income, and then the monthly burden, inclusive of all of the things that we're talking about: real estate, personal property, and the 3 enterprise funds. And if you look at that last column as a percentage of the median household income,
Median household income, yeah.
you can see Manassas Park is at around 45%, which is a lot lower than some of the other jurisdictions. So that's a good thing, right? It's, you know, we're kind of middle of the road there. The one thing I would point out is that from the median household income, we are the lowest of the jurisdictions in absolute dollar terms.
Mhm.
And so while from a percentage basis, we may look middle of the pack, we also have to think about, you know, the absolute dollar impact on the families, you know, in the community. And so just something to consider as we weigh the different investments that we're going to make over the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that last column is, you'll see some of the, everything that's over 50% is highlighted in red. It comes out pink on the screen. The HUD considers you severely house burdened if your total house obligations, including these fees and whatnot, are over 50%. And so that's why I did that. Just to illustrate that they are. But you're right, being house burdened at 50% when you're making
Double the income.
Yeah, exactly. Then what's left over goes a lot further than what's left over in your
Exactly.
$100,000
Exactly.
income at Manassas Park. But
Yeah.
this is the closest I could get to apples, so.
No, but I think this is a great chart. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. You asked for it, so.
If you go to slide 36, just that overall overview of the fund budget.
Yep,
So this is assuming that there's the 1 cent reduction.
correct.
and with the increases in the enterprise funds?
No, this is just the general fund.
Or just general fund? So,
We'll talk about the enterprise funds coming up.
so if we did a 2-cent reduction, the overall total revenue will be negative than the, I guess, the total expenses?
If we did a 2-cent reduction, just basically reduce both by $373,000, I think, 276, whatever it was.
Like 500 something?
No, that's for two.
Yeah,
We've already
2
got
cents.
one in there, so you
Right.
only have to do one more.
Right.
So again, then we'd have to find $273,000 worth of other things to remove from it or cover it with unassigned fund balance.
Okay. So if we, because right now I see the revenue 82,995, and expenditure is 82,995. So it basically it's the same right now.
Well, it has to be, that's legal.
So
That's-
it's zero out the budget. And
You have to,
everything.
yes.
So my question is, if we did a 2-cent reduction minus the 273, or whatever the amount
Right,
is,
yeah.
then can we balance it out without tapping into the fund balance or reserves?
Yeah, that's where we start talking about training and travel and those things, and probably staff cuts. I mean, that's a pretty big lift. at
Staff
this
split
point. Staff cuts,
cuts.
because this is about as lean as we can make it, and without getting into that.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off that, if we cut it 2 cents this year, is that sustainable for next year?
Well, it's sustainable only in that, you're never gonna raise it, but it will be a $6 million loss of revenue over the course of 10 years. So, it compounds over time, and so that's what it would look like in the 10-year model if you did 2 cents now.
Okay.
Single
Sure.
Slide 29, I was wondering if I could get comparison to that to the other jurisdictions, because I know that's extremely high compared to the other jurisdictions with their adoption. Most of them are around anywhere from 100 to 300. I got my assessment last week, as many did, and the increase was 8%. It's been like that almost every single year, even with the reduction. I don't get a salary increase of 8% every year. I think you do have to make some reductions. I think you have 9 vacant positions. You should identify reductions. The hardship here on this community is too great. It's just, when you took the average home here and you compare it to Fairfax County, I mean, what I'm paying for like a $1.4 million home in Fairfax County, my tax rate here. And it places too much hardship here, so I think you should make reductions on some of on those vacant positions. I know there were some ARPA funded positions. I think it's gonna be tough, but we have to do that. So that's my recommendation.
Well, there's no need to cut now unless you do something to the rates. So, right now, the budget is balanced, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the impact of the additional real estate tax?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't calculate that in the other jurisdictions as far as what their assessed value increases were. I just
Right.
looked at what they were, what the average
Right,
assessment
what the average was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, the 2-cent reduction on slide number 28, if we can go back there real quick. It's projected that over 10 years is a $6 million reduction. In that projection, does it include additional revenues from economic development in the downtown or the new units coming online that are being built as we drive by Manassas Drive?
Yeah, it includes everything we know about that but we don't want to count your revenue until you have it. And like I said, the project next door, that real estate tax revenue is earmarked to pay for this building, pay the debt service on this building. So while there will be some things going up, they're committed to other things. Northview or Northridge, the one up on that we sold here a couple months ago, that's an unknown, but they probably won't be breaking ground for a couple years. So, and I will say that the outlook gets better after 28, and so who knows what's going to happen then once the theaters open and everything. But we only include the things we know, and there are some things out there we don't know that we expect to happen, but until it happens, you can't really forecast it.
So the revenue from the movie theater is included in the 10-year projection?
Not yet, no, because we
Oh, it's
haven't.
not?
No. Not yet.
Okay, so
Yeah.
economic, okay.
So we've done some forecasting on that and some modeling to see what it looks like it'll be, but until the doors open, we can't
Yeah.
really count it.
And that would include things like the American Steakhouse and
Mhm.
other things
Yep.
that we know will open
Yeah.
within a year.
Yeah, the good thing about those two, the two under us and that one and the movie theater is it's all on tax-free land right now. So once the movie theater buys it, it goes off the city, rolls onto theirs, and now all of a sudden it's taxable real estate. So that's one of the beauties of that happening, because we don't charge ourselves tax money.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope we don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so that number is somewhat movable based on economic development that will occur over the next 10 years.
No, 2 cents over 10 years is $6 million. We might have other money that will grow to supplant that. But
Yes.
that's just straight math. That's what it will be.
No, I'm talking about the supplanting with additional revenue.
Right.
Will
That could
occur.
very well happen, or could go the other way. But yeah. But yeah, you're right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Enterprise funds?
Good evening. Mayor Mensing, Vice Mayor Moore, Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development for the City of Manassas Park. Here to talk tonight about enterprise funds and the suggested rate increases for the FY26 budget. I wanted to first start by just a general reminder on both water and sewer side. We are only a distribution authority. We are not a treatment authority. So on the water side, we get our water from the neighbors that we touch that have water systems that are immediately adjacent to us. So we buy water for part of our city through the City of Manassas. And then we buy water from Prince William County. Their Prince William Water is now they've named themselves, but we are getting most of our water actually from Prince William County that's coming from Fairfax Water through Prince William County. So there's a pretty heavy surcharge on that water. And then with Manassas, some of the water we get from Manassas certainly is handled there at the dam on Glenkirk. Their treatment facility, but a lot of the water that we get from them is coming through Prince William, which is also coming from Fairfax Water. So, this is a very convoluted tale of purchasing water, but we don't have choices. We have had to cap all of our wells. We used to supplant the western end of the city with 7 wells, but those all got bacteriological issues, and that dream could not continue, so those wells were capped. And since that time, which was 2008 through 2010, we have been 100% dependent on water from Manassas and Prince William County. On the sewer side, everyone in this area is mandated by state code to have their sewage treated by UOSA. To try to unpack the box a little bit, we are all jurisdictions in UOSA are under one agreement. When you think about cost allocation, they're now doing a study to try to determine if cost allocation is to everyone's satisfaction and accurate. But for the most part, capital costs, as they're determined by UOSA to be capital costs, are charged proportionally based on the actual capacity that you own. We own about 5% of the capacity at the plant. So when it comes to capital things, that you also incurs, we pay about 5% of that. There are a lot of operational charges, and those operational charges are based on our actual flows. So all of the flows from the City of Manassas Park are metered, all the flows from the other jurisdictions are metered. The only real variable in cost allocation is actually their conveyance system and how much of their conveyance system you're using, and that has remained pretty steady since UOSA was formed and we entered into the first agreement, which has been restated several times to try to make the jurisdictions happy with their ownership agreements. So just to kind of try to unpack it that simply, if you own 5% of the plant, you pay 5% of the capital costs, but the operational costs are based on how much flow we're actually sending their way. And that's true for all jurisdictions. To kind of go over, we do have 3 enterprise funds. The Stormwater Enterprise Fund is the one that was the least amount of surprises. In 2014, there was a massive change in the way things are done in the state of Virginia, which put us in a place where we are what's called the Virginia Stormwater Management Program Authority. So instead of the state getting submissions for all of these large general permits to disturb over an acre of ground. Instead of the state handling all of that, we have to handle that. So we handle the stormwater and the E&S for all large construction sites in the city. That was a major change. In order to do that and meet the terms of that unfunded mandate, we have to have inspectors who are trained and certified. We have to have program administrators who are trained and certified. We have to have staff in place that meet state qualifications, plan reviewers to make this happen. So it's an unfunded mandate. Also around that time, the state was falling behind in its Ches Bay obligations to meet total mass daily load reductions. We were all put on a 3-permit cycle mandate to achieve our total mass daily load reductions. First permit cycle was very easy for the city of Manassas Park. We were already sweeping streets. So to meet our 5%, all we had to do was keep sweeping streets. The next permit cycle got a little harder. We were going to have to do several relatively large projects to actually achieve that. But what wound up happening was we have credits from what UOSA does. And the way UOSA handles sewer, we were able to capitalize on those credits and not actually have to do any projects to meet our 40% reductions for the second permit cycle. But now we are brushing up against the final permit cycle. So we have to do 100% of our reductions over the next 4 years. And you'll see in the budget that we're spending quite a bit of capital money to do it, even though we've been blessed with some congressionally directed spending to help us with our largest project, the bird sanctuary stream restoration. And we have SLAF grant money for the Pond 1 improvements, and we anticipate getting SLAF money for the remainder of our improvements that will really iron out after we finish the stream restoration. So we anticipate getting about 50% assistance from the state to achieve these projects, but it's still millions and millions of dollars in burden, and we don't have the fund balance to cover it. So we'll talk more about that when we actually look at the increases. But we also have a solid waste fund that we don't bring in as much money from the users as we pay out in contract costs. So that fund is running in the negative. We would like for them to be self-sustaining. It's never good to look at an enterprise fund and worry about the burden that it's having on the general fund, but that's the position we're in. All 3 of these funds have expenditures higher than revenues going into 26, and some of them already have negative fund balances. But it's very, enterprise funds are typically used for utilities, and they're typically supposed to be self-sustaining. That's your goal, to make them self-sustaining and to have some sort of cash reserve to handle expenditures. If we have an unforeseen incident, say the 20-inch line running through the golf course blows out of the ground, we probably don't have enough cash reserve to handle that and all the other capital we planned in that year. That would be something where, okay, if the general fund has to subsidize because of an unforeseen incident, that's not the end of the world. But planning to subsidize is probably not best practice. So this is a look at the water sewer fund, and this is the do nothing look. So as you can see, we are anticipating starting FY26 in a negative position, being negative 102,000 in the water sewer enterprise fund. Our revenues are only 8.6 million. Our anticipated expenditures are 11.76 million. So by the end of FY26, if we do nothing, we'll be running $3.2 million in the negative in the water sewer enterprise fund. Again, when you think about the fact that, so yes, you're still bringing in $8.6 million throughout the year to help with your cash position, but this is like the kid that just started driving in your family, and he gets a part-time job making $100 a week, but altogether his insurance and gas is $600 a month. Yeah, the job is nice and it helps, but it's still an extra financial burden on the family. Well, in this case, it's an extra financial burden on the general fund because it's hurting our cash position to have to cover this difference and still execute the capital projects. If we were to try to completely remove any general fund subsidy and bring the fund into a good operating position it would require a 37% increase in FY '26. And that's a little higher than I think what we were shown. We were trying to do some quick math, and I accidentally put the stormwater figures for '26 capital in there. So once we put the actual water sewer capital expenditures in, it changed it from 30% to 37%, or 37% that we would have to increase it by. And that's not looking at anything in the out years. This would actually put us in a, you'll see in some of these slides, we've added a cash reserve balance line. And just to talk about cash reserve balance and enterprise funds, most of everything you're going to read is going to say a good, healthy cash reserve balance is 12 to 16%. You're looking at anywhere from 1 to 90, 30 days to 90 days of expenditure coverage in a cash reserve account. So 12 to 16%, I've seen a lot of different places. With the enterprise funds, more so than like general funds, I've seen them talking about actually percentages of your expenditures rather than looking at your revenues and trying to carry a percentage of your revenues. But that would be a good, healthy goal if we don't have large capital investment years that are going beyond the fund balance. If you have large capital investment years like we're facing in the Stormwater Enterprise Fund for the next few years, clearly a 12 to 16% cash reserve is not going to get us through those large investment hurdles. So in those cases, you would try to build up a larger reserve going into those heavy capital years. This is a look at a 10% increase in the water sewer. Again, it leaves you with a general fund subsidy of $2.25 million. That leaves you as still in a $2.35 million negative position in FY '26, and doing no increases in the out years. You can see we never really, there's 1 year where we kind of pop into a positive fund balance position, but then we're back into a negative fund balance position after that. So we're certainly not achieving any cash reserve goals, and we are subsidizing in 5 of these 6 years. 4 of these 6 years, excuse me. With an increase of 5% in FY '26 in the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund, simply you're going farther negative, $2.78 million negative in your fund balance. You have a general fund subsidy of $2.68 million. And we have 1 year where we actually have, or 2 years where we have no general fund subsidy, but then we go back into a pretty hefty negative position of $1.8 and $1 million in the out years. And that's a 5% increase every year. That's not just 1 year. So this is if we just did 5% every year, we still only have a couple good years in there where we could actually say we're maintaining some sort of positive balance. To the average customer, again, we're saying that the average customer is a single-family customer using about 5,000 gallons a month. Now, clearly with low-flow fixtures, some of the newer stuff coming in, hopefully people are keeping their consumption down to around 3,000, 3,500. But I know that my family of 4 was regularly 5,000 to 6,000 gallons. I saw Ms. Mensing's consumption. She's doing a great job. I don't know how she keeps her kids from using all that water, but.
Oh, they just don't shower.
Anyways, with a 10% increase, you're looking at a $1.09 increase per T-gal. So that's a $1.09 increase. That's a $1.09 increase on your T-gal and $4.98 added to your base fee. So altogether, on a 5,000 gallon a month account, it's $11.93 in your usage fee, and your base fee is now $54.76. So the total impact under the 10% model would go from $103.98 to $114.41. It's a $10 a month increase, $10.43 a month increase. The 5%, again, you're looking at about half of the last increase, so $5.19 a month would be the impact to a 5,000 gallon a month residential single family customer. Stormwater fund, this is the one that we knew was coming. For several years, we modeled selling bonds to achieve these TMDL projects. Once upon a time, we thought that the TMDL projects may reach as high as 21 million in capital costs. Clearly, we were never going to achieve that level of fund balance, so we anticipated having to sell bonds. Again, we've been very fortunate. We had some public-private partnership potential coming in that showed us the value of stream restoration, and we kind of knew from 2015 on that stream restoration was going to be a much more efficient way of getting rid of our total suspended solids, but we didn't realize how much it was going to save us to focus purely on stream restoration. We're now looking at about $6 million out of pocket for the city, and that may even go down. We just don't have that in fund balance. Right now, we're starting fund position in FY26 of 2.1 million, and our expenditures are higher than our revenues. So we're not, we will achieve some of the capital expenditures in 26, but we're going to have heavy capital expenditures through 28 and 29, trying to clean up the rest of these TMDL reductions. We have been able to remove selling debt, selling bonds from the equation if we can do this through fee increases. There's always the possibility that we decide that we would rather sell bonds to achieve this short-term capital, because there is problems with trying to raise this level of reserve so quickly. If we had done this over 5 to 10 years, then the impact on the user wouldn't have been so substantial. But now having to charge 25, 30% increases to get the fund balance up does seem a bit onerous on the user. And then you're going to reach a point where you're not going to be spending $2 to $3 million in capital. And at that point, you're just building unnecessary fund balance. And that's not a healthy position to be in. At that point, we'd have to look at decreasing rates, because I couldn't stand up here and tell you we should be running 80 and 90% cash reserve fund balances. That doesn't make any sense for utility. But if we do nothing in FY26, do not increase rates at all, we're pretty good in 26, but by the time we really start spending money on our TMDL projects, we still have a balance in FY27. But we are subsidizing those capital projects to the tune of $381,000. And then in FY28, when we really get rolling on our TMDL reduction projects and we really start spending, we do drive the fund balance negative by 1.5, almost 1.6 million, and we would be subsidizing from the general fund with $2 million to support the capital projects. That again is the do nothing option. If we do a 25% increase, we keep the fund balance very healthy through 28. We still, by only doing the 25% increase in FY26 and not looking at additional increases in the out years, you can see that the fund balance does go negative and stay negative. And the general fund subsidy does pop up in FY28 to almost $2 million, and then we would be subsidizing basically at that point what would be operations and capital maintenance costs. With a 15% increase in FY26, we would again have a very healthy reserve balance in FY26 and a healthy fund position. We would have a healthy fund balance, you could say. It's over the 12 to 16% cash reserve balance, but you're still planning a lot more capital than you're used to in FY28. So you see that even with that healthy balance in 27, by the time you're done spending in 28, you're in a negative position by $1 million, and it cost your general fund almost $2 million in subsidy to make that capital happen. And again, these are mandated capital improvements. We cannot, if we don't do these, we don't know exactly what happens, but this is a DEQ EPA joint effort mandate on the jurisdictions. We would be threatened at a minimum with not having our MS4 permit anymore. And I don't know what that entails. I don't think the DEQ even wants to answer the question if we ask it. It's one of those things where you don't want to try it. So what that increase means, and again, we have a relatively low stormwater fee. We haven't been very aggressive with increasing it. It's currently $182 a year. You see it on your real estate bill. So you're paying that in, you know, $90 installments twice a year on your real estate bill. To do the 25% increase, you're talking about adding $45.72 to everybody's real estate bill. And that would bring your total annual cost up to $228.60. To do a 15% increase, you're looking at an annual impact of $27.43. So the total annual cost to a single-family homeowner would be $210.31. The next steps is, you know, we have to set the rates May 6th so that we can get advertised. So we really need some direction here on which way we want to go with these rates. Again, there are options. There's ways we can play with the numbers in the out years, but with stormwater especially, we knew this was coming. If we don't decide to sell bonds to tackle the capital, you're going to have to subsidize pretty heavily, at least through 28 and 29. And then I think there might be some light at the end of the tunnel, but it's gonna be a really bad position for the general fund to be in if we're subsidizing millions of dollars in stormwater capital and millions of dollars in water sewer capital. I think that the funds need to work their way to being more self-sustaining, but I can't tell you that we should increase rates by 30%. I understand. It's just more or less, this is what the picture looks like. So we're looking for guidance, and I hope I explained some things about how it's working.
He did. Thank you very much, Calvin. Questions? Start with Councilmember Javed.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. You said the projects that, the emergency projects that come up, you want them to be self-sustained from the enterprise funds.
No, I think the
Instead-
emergencies, you know, things that we can't reasonably foresee. I'll give you an example, and this is probably a bad example because the developer would have ultimately been responsible for those costs. But when Caden Ridge was being, or the Elms was being constructed, they blew a 24-inch water line out of the ground with blasting operations. Now, yeah, ultimately, the developer's gonna have to pay that back. You know, the county wasn't the one out there with explosives in the ground. But in the short term, that line had to be repaired. And those costs could have quickly achieved $3 million. You know, you've got to shut down an entire part of the water system. You've got to get in there with heavy equipment and replace a very large section of water line. If something like that were to happen and you have to temporarily subsidize the water sewer enterprise fund with general fund money, that's not the end of the world. Nobody could have foreseen that coming. But to the extent that we can foresee real capital improvements, real capital maintenance, real capital expenditures, we should be planning those in our fee structure so that the enterprise fund is self-sustaining and can fund its own capital, its own planned capital. Emergency capital, I think there's a legitimate argument that the general fund may be put in that position someday where it should subsidize temporarily, and then rates can be adjusted in the out years to gain that money back.
Right. And then right, I mean, to that point, I mean, that's why we have reserve funds, is just so we can tap into for emergencies if we need to. But like, if there's like infrastructure grants that could help with some of the offset expenses, why wouldn't we pursue those?
Well, we have not found a lot of grant assistance for water sewer. We have been working with Merchant McIntyre for many years. We've applied for everything that they've recommended that we apply for. We have had a lot of luck with stormwater. So your major stormwater TMDL reduction projects right now are all in some way, shape, or form funded by grants that we've achieved. So for the stream restoration project, you have congressionally directed spending going to that project, relieving the city of, we're not paying 100% costs on that. And with the Pond 1 retrofit, you're paying 50% of your costs. The rest is coming from the Virginia SLAF fund. And we are completely anticipating giving shovel-ready projects, you know, grant applications to the state for shovel-ready projects for the rest of our TMDL projects and getting SLAF money for those. So where the money's available, I feel like we're getting it. What there's not a lot of money on the table for is water sewer projects. So and I don't think that's unique to the city, because we are working with a grant specialist and we're getting a lot of money in other areas. We're just not getting money in water and sewer.
Water sewer. Okay, I mean, yeah, these grant, the increases, I mean, I see what the department is trying to achieve, but the increases are steep. And now I was even like for the 30% increase. Now you're saying 37%. That's even more of a hit on our residents. But I have no questions. I think after the round of questions, I have a couple comments. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, so thank you for the presentation. I realize that you have a difficult job, presenting the current state of affairs to us. So I thank you for everything. No question. If I'm doing comments only, should I do them now or should I hold?
Let's ask Calvin the questions about the enterprise funds, and then we'll talk to Carl about the rate setting and this slide to Carl afterwards.
All right, then I'll hold off.
Okay.
Thanks, Calvin, for the presentation once again. Just a quick question on the modeling on page, or chart page 48. What was the thinking, or just what is the thought? Maybe it's because we're just adopting the FY26, but the 15% increase and then maybe a 10% increase in 27. In other words, showing if we increased it over several years, what the impact would be, as opposed to the one static year.
So we've played around with probably 580 versions of each one of these funds because it's so easy. The way it's built is we literally just plug in the percentages and it increases the rates in the next year. And so we've done the quick math every which way. There's so many options we could present to the body. We want to show 26. We just kind of want to show what it would look like in 26, and then in the out years with stormwater, I don't feel as though we're going to have that much change in the out years. I think we pretty much know the stormwater picture. The big hope there is that the $2 million that we're holding out for in FY28 to finish those last projects gets reduced. Maybe the stream restoration project removes more suspended solids than we thought, and it's less of a chore to finish up our obligations. There is a little possibility there, but the picture is very clear with stormwater. We've already achieved most of the grant money. We've already priced out the projects. They've been designed, with the exception of the bird sanctuary, they've been designed, but they've definitely been estimated by professionals and priced out. Water and sewer, we're just in that sort of time right now where we've got all the phased water system improvements that we're falling behind on, the ones that everybody wants to tighten up the west end of the city and lower our break rates and help us with our water loss. And the one thing that I try to remind everybody is if water's leaking into the ground, it's increasing our sewer I&I too. If our water system's not tight, our sewer system's not tight, and if water's getting into our sewer system, we're paying to treat it. So yes, we need to be attacking those phased water system improvements, and we also have aging pump stations where the controls are failing. They weren't built with any sort of capacity overflow protection. We have a lot of money that we've been kicking this can down the road for a long time, and it's catching up to us. And we can keep deferring capital and changing the out-year picture, but all we're doing is stacking more and more and more capital in the out years. So we're not modeling the out years so much because there's so many variables there. We can play with deferring capital in the out years. I can tell you that all of these, you run pretty hefty increases for a few years, and then you're able to dial them back and kind of hang with the rate of inflation, right? If you just see a 2% as an average rate of inflation and you continue to raise the rates in the out years like that after a few years of hefty increases, the funds stabilize. And with the stormwater fund, you increase the rates to keep yourself healthy through 28 and 29, and like I said, you all of a sudden develop obnoxious cash reserve balances that I would have to recommend rate decreases, because there's no point in having 90 to 100% cash reserve balance if you're not doing that much capital. So the out years are the mystery. We certainly model them. It's very quick to model them in any way you want to see, because we're just plugging in a percentage into a year and it's doing all the work for us. but we've played with it so much that what we should present to you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Calvin, I really do. But I also look at a budget document as a roadmap or planning document for our residents. So wanting to be transparent to them that we have to increase our rates by 15, 20% in the stormwater fund, whatever it is. But then we'll also have to come to you next year and increase those rates. And we're showing in the chart, because right now if they were to look at this online, oh, okay, 10% this year, 15% we're saying here. We're cool with the $48 this year, but and then we kind of hit them again next year with another 10 or 15%. It just seems like it would be helpful for them to see our plan through our budget document and how we're modeling, because we know, I think all of us on this dais know, that we'll probably have to do it more than just FY26.
Yeah, and I completely think that if you just want to give us some general direction on a cash reserve balance to shoot for, then I think that's very doable. If you want to give us a rule on how much general fund subsidy is too much in each fund, that's something we can shoot for. And we can definitely get numbers that achieve those goals. But if we don't have set numbers from the okay, well, we never want to subsidize more than $500,000 in projects per fund. We never want to, our end goal, we never want to have more than 20% cash reserves in an enterprise fund. We never want to have less than 10. It's simple rules like that, and we can bring you models that achieve your goals and see what you think of those numbers.
No, I think that's very fair, Calvin. I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Okay, moving down. Yes, Steve? No question.
The only comment I have is, Calvin, you may remember this. I guess previous to the previous city manager, the manager was telling me, when we had those budget issues in 2015, the only thing that saves us the water department, the water. And they would use the water to pay a lot of the other department budgets. And unfortunately, that's what we've been doing. And we haven't used it for water. Been paying it sometimes in some of the departments up to 30 to 40% of the department salaries, when you would think it should go to water. And that's unfortunate. And now we're in this predicament. So water should pay for water. It's capital. It's inflation and any maintenance. But that's what should have been done back then. We wouldn't be in this situation now.
I agree. Mr. Cole showed you a slide where we're spending more in admin fees out of the fund than we are in actual,
Right.
what I would call controllable operating costs. Your salaries, your materials for your daily repairs, your hand tools, all of those items fit into what I labeled as standard operating costs. And those standard operating costs are lower than the admin fees. So
Correct. But I remember back then, I used to pay a quarter of HR department. A quarter of water and sewers issues, HR's issues, are not water issues. I used to pay, I think, a quarter, a third of IT department. A third of the IT work in this department, in this city, is not done directly on water. So.
And I think we want to look at that. It's just as Mr. Cole stated,
But
you don't want to be arbitrary.
Correct. And I believe there's a cost of business, it may be 5 to 10%. But when the residents think it's an enterprise fund, they think the water, what you're paying for the water is for itself, its staff, its capital, its inflation, its maintenance. And not paying for 30 to 50%, it pays, I think, 20% of council salaries too. I don't think 20%, 20% of our work is just water. There's a lot, the government's big, so.
Those numbers are all in the Appendix C every year, the admin fee breakdown, so you're able to see what the water, sewer, and the
Correct.
stormwater, the solid waste enterprise are paying out per department in admin fees. It's been transparent.
Correct.
Is it accurate?
Because I know in 2006 or 7, we looked at I know the city looked at possibly moving into the service authority. And the reason it hesitated, that's because they wanted a lot of the reserve of the cash fund up front. But when it pays for the departments and you're making money off of it, and the residents don't really know that, and then the rates are high, and you wonder, why are you paying what you pay in Fairfax County once a month, and I pay that every 3 months, and you wonder, why is it expensive? And the reason it's expensive is because it's subsidizing a lot of the departments, and it shouldn't be done that way. But thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate you meeting with me prior to the meeting, and so give me a little orient myself with this, so thank you. Just a quick clarification. So water and sewage fees are going to affect all residents, renters, and owners And stormwater only affects homeowners, is that correct?
No, stormwater fee, so for, yes, on the residential side.
Yes.
I don't want to confuse anyone. Stormwater fees are charged to both residential and, every parcel in the city that's not owned by the city is being charged a stormwater fee, whether it's residential or commercial. The commercial is charged in a different way. So residential, single family is all charged the same rate. You get a slight discount for being a townhouse or a condo. And what happens is with that, you develop, there's approximately 2,500 square feet of impervious area per residential single family house. So if you're commercial, you're paying an ERU. For every 2,500 square feet of impervious area on your commercial parcel, you're paying the stormwater fee. So it is being billed to every parcel in the city, but it would not affect renters because they're probably only through the increased cost in rent that their landlord is passing on to them because of what they're paying to the city.
Okay, so the increase for the stormwater is impacting homeowners directly. And then I wanted to look at slide 44. So just to look at the total impact, because I was really focused on the monthly fee and it just said, oh, it's just $5 for the 10%, but it's really not. You're looking at the $10, $10 or $11 increase here. It's really the total impact at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you proposing the 10%? Because that's where or are you proposing, because I know you have the 37%, if you were to take care of it all.
The 37%, I don't, that's what it would take to not subsidize the fund. We knew the fund was gonna be unhealthy. If you go back and you look at the FY25 budget presentation, the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund in the FY25 Appendix C is running in the negative for both 26 and 27. We knew it was going to be a problem in 26, 27. The hope is that in the out years, as we build more customers, we have sort of a capacity issue. We have a lot more water capacity in our Prince William agreement than we actually need. And so ideally, you want more customers. You don't want to be paying all that extra.
So do we
debt.
pay for capacity we don't use?
Yes, yes. With Manassas, we renegotiated, restated our agreement to get out of a take or pay situation. That was
What's the
probably a
percentage of capacity that's unused?
It was about 50%, but as we've built more users, that number is dropping every year.
Okay. So you're recommending the 10% at this point? Or
I think the 10%, if we look at increases continuing into the out years and try to get the fund stable over the next 3 to 4 years till we start erasing the negative fund balance and building a fund balance back so that my big concern here is that we don't want the general fund, we don't want to look at the general fund and say, oh, well, we have a wonderful, healthy 15% reserve. But in reality, that's not the true picture because you're spending $2 million of that money to subsidize water sewer capital and $2 million to subsidize stormwater capital. And in the end, you don't really have that healthy reserve. So I just think that the enterprise funds, as long as we can get the picture looking good in the out years, I'm fine with a 10% increase in 26. It's just gonna be more aggressive increases in 27 and 28. And, I'd like 37% would get you the opportunity to only have a nasty increase once, but I can't recommend that. I can't say that I think we should do a 37% increase. I think I'd get tired of talking to papers.
okay, so you do recommend the 10, because I just noticed you showed the increase only for 5 and 10.
Yeah.
With 10 first, so I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. So we do have interviews that were supposed to start 15 minutes ago. If it's okay, let's just talk about the rate setting that we need for next week and then email any comments, questions, if that's all right with you all. Now, just to clarify, the rate setting is the not to exceed rate. So correct me if I'm wrong, but we can advertise 1 cent reduction and still do 2.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know.
I think the other one.
Is Dean on?
So we can add.
Dean is on.
whatever you advertise, you can go underneath.
You can go
Yeah.
under.
Yeah, we can
Can't
reduce.
exceed it.
So, right,
Can't
so
go
we can
under.
advertise 1 cent, but we can still reduce 2. Now with the fees, if we advertise that we're reducing, or we're increasing 20%, we can't do more, but we could do less?
You can always go lower, you can't
Okay.
go higher.
Okay, so just keep
Yes.
that in mind
Yeah.
when we talk about what we're gonna be doing for next week. If we don't mind, let's go down.
Clarify, the 1 cent can't go to 2 cents. 2 cents could go to 1 cent.
No, 1
No.
cent can go to 2 cents.
It's a reduction.
It's a
not an-
reduction, but
We
remember,
could always reduce more.
you can
I see.
reduce it, but then we'll have to figure out a way to cut
The overall.
the overall.
Yeah.
So
I think what you-
something
what you
else,
do is
like
the
we've
rate.
already cut, but we're gonna have to
Yeah.
find more ways to cut.
About $273, 273,000
Or
per year.
Okay.
an additional 3
So-
million over 10 years.
Yes.
Can we say 1 cent with the direction of finding another cent?
I don't think that's how it works. The tax rate next week is, you just put the rate,
Yeah,
and
you
you
put-
can't go above it.
Right.
So whatever the rate is, so it's like 139.5 or 130, you can only do whatever that
Right.
rate is, and then go underneath.
Yes.
It's a, you just
Okay.
can't exceed that rate.
So is everyone comfortable advertising 1 cent with the discussion still being open of doing more than that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I would
So
like 2 cents. So,
Everyone but Michael is okay with
yes.
advertising 1 cent. Now, how about the fees? We have to advertise that as well. We can still lower it. I don't recommend advertising 37 cents, but we could go under it.
I guess I had a comment, but, which was it is what it is. I think that the enterprise fund should be self-funding, right? And not draw down from the general funds. That's the best practice, right? So we're in this situation, it's painful. And so my recommendation or guidance would be, spreading the pain. I think that the proposals are around like 10% or 15% versus 37 or 25 is an attempt at that. Is it appropriate to say, to the vice mayor's point about, hey, there's a raise in this fiscal year, but then there's zeros throughout the out year? Could we say in our proposed budget for 26, we want, let's say 15% for all three, just making up a number. And then every other fiscal year, we would expect another, 10 or 15%. Can we project those increases even though we're not committing to them in the out years, if that makes sense?
Yeah, we can. There's so many variables happening right now with, we're gonna have so many new water users coming online that, I don't expect that's gonna be necessary, but, that's why, like Calvin said, we did 500 different models and there's just so many variables, we can't predict it. But chances are there will be some kind of an increase. I just don't know how much it'll be.
Yeah, I guess I think we should spread the pain over time, and
Yeah.
we should be transparent about what we believe to be a reasonable increase over the next 5 to 10 years versus just saying, hey, we're going to take the middle of the road approach now, but then we don't know what the future is going to hold. Because I think people will be upset if they think that this is ripping the Band-Aid off, and it turns out it's not later on.
Yeah, we can definitely model what it would take to make it healthy. I think, again, once we get these big projects done in '28, there's a very good chance, number one, we'll have more users, and you won't have as many projects. You might be able to make a pretty good reduction.
But let's agree on a rate to advertise now, and then perhaps you could readjust for next time. Let's prepare for the worst. I would rather tell them that we need to increase in 2 years, and they'd be like, look, we don't need to. I'd
Right.
rather them be able
Sure.
to budget for that.
Yeah, well, we can send you a model like that.
Okay.
We just need to know what the starting point is, so.
Vice Mayor, would you like to propose a?
Yeah, I would say water
rate?
and sewer would be 15% in '26,
Okay,
and in '27, probably 10%.
okay. Do you have a proposal for the others?
Um,
So
and then
advertising,
stormwater, the 15% in '26, and 10% in '27.
Mhm.
No, I'm gonna take that back, because our stormwater is low. It's a low percentage. I would say 15 in '26 and 15 in '27.
And your feelings about solid waste?
No, that's driven pretty much by the contract. I didn't really look at that one. Let's see.
Ms. Mayor, I think you can only do one, like, it's a one-year outlay. on the fees and the tax structure next week we vote? I think we just can only vote 1 year. We can intend it to be that, but I think you can only do 1 year.
Sure, we're not committing.
Yeah, this is not
Yeah.
We're not
advertising.
committing, it's just for informational purposes.
Okay.
Right.
Mhm.
So I had written down, 15% for water and sewer, 15 for stormwater, 10 for solid waste. That-
Okay.
Solid waste works
So
for
so I
me too.
basically agree with
Yeah.
what you were recommending, so.
So 15 for water sewer, 15 for stormwater,
Yeah.
10 for solid waste. Is anyone not okay with that? Raise your hand. I see it was not. Michael is not. Anyone else? Okay, so you have the direction to advertise then?
Yes, and I will get we'll get models out hopefully tomorrow on what to expect in the future, even though that's not what you'll be voting on next week.
Sure.
I just want to say, we do have some timing issues because we have to advertise for 7 days in the local newspaper before we can have some of these meetings, so we're getting to the point where we can't futz with it too much more because we're going to run out of time, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so email any questions, also keeping in mind that city manager is going out of town.
Exactly, yes.
But, okay, so you have your direction for next
Yep.
meeting.
Thank you.
All right, yes, and email any comments, questions. Let's move on to our interviews. Does anyone need to take a? Okay,
Let's go.
that's fine.
Wash my hands.
Okay.
I'm gonna go wash my hands.